This is an update to a previous video on Face Forensics identity verification software, which is based on our advanced F2 face recognition technology. F2 is available as a standalone or networked application, as a .NET SDK, and as a web service. While the SDK is almost always used for operational systems, the application makes it easy to demo, so I'll use that here. The user interface is as straightforward as possible, all the clever stuff's at the back end. So you're looking at the main screen. There are two areas into which we can drop facial images and a small box at the bottom to show the match percentage. I've already dropped in the first image, so now I'll drop in the other one. What happens next is that F2 finds the eyes, you can see where it's placed markers on them, and uses them as anchor points around which it determines the characteristics of some 3,000 features in the central area of each face, and transforms these into a numeric string which becomes a unique identifier for this facial image. It then compares the two strings to generate the match percentage. In this example, it's 97.3%, well above the typical acceptance threshold level of around 92%, indicating that the two shots are of the same person. When the match percentage exceeds the threshold, the individual is allowed to enter the building. When used operationally, an individual's facial images will tend to be very similar. Because they want the system to accept their face, they'll tend to use the same expression each time they enter. If I drop in someone else's face, then the match percentage drops significantly, in this case to 81.6%, in other words well below the threshold, at which point entry is refused and security personnel can take the person aside for further checking. Incidentally, hair and beards are generally ignored in face recognition systems because they can be easily changed. If the faces are very similar, then security can magnify the two images in sync to aid the investigation by simply using the scroll wheel on the mouse. So that's the principle. However, for real-world use, the process can be highly streamlined. For example, if the organization uses RFID access cards, then as the individual approaches the entry point, two things happen. The first is that the card reader senses the card, reads the ID number, uses this to access the individual's record in the database, and retrieves their registration photo. In parallel, a video camera behind the entry point sees a face coming towards it and automatically captures 3 to 4 shots of it. It does this in case their eyes are shut, they're momentarily looking down, and so on. The images are encoded and the match percentage is generated. This whole process takes about a second, so a valid employee may not even have to slow down on their way into the building. If the ID cards are contact-based rather than RFID, the process is the same, except the individual will have to tap or enter their card in a reader as they approach the entry point. When F2 determines that the individual isn't the owner of the ID card, the system can be switched to identification mode, where the camera shot can be compared with every face in the database, including previous employees, contractors, service people, etc., to see if there's a match, say from a disgruntled ex-employee. An implication of this approach is that once the word gets out that the system can do this, it basically stops buddy punching stone dead. No employee will want to risk censure or termination to help a colleague skip work. So in summary, F2 identity verification is highly effective, easy to integrate, very fast, non-intrusive, and also inexpensive to deploy. Why not try it?